second episode of the Athletes Podcast, where we will be keeping you up to date with sports relevant information as well as Olympic Games Tokyo related information to help you and assist you to have enough information regarding these games. My name is Kotsa Mokwena, Olympic silver medalist in Beijing 2008. And we are joined here today by one of the best athletes, a superstar from the National Paralympic team, heading to the Games, Mr. Tyron Pillay, a bronze medalist at the last Olympic Games in Rio, smashing that African record. Welcome, Mr. Pillay.
Thanks, Kotso. Thanks for having me.
Great. We are also joined by a lovely lady who doesn't need much presentation, the captain of the Proteas netball team. She runs the Bongi Msomi Foundation. She's also a coach and a netball manager at the University of Johannesburg. Bongi Msomi, welcome.
Thanks, Kotso.
Lovely. We are also joined by Dr. Patu Zondi, who is the official Team SA COVID liaison officer. She's going to share with us on what it entails to be the COVID liaison officer for Team SA and more. She's also Team SA's chief medical officer. Now, there's a lot that athletes and sports teams want to know, and I'm sure that Dr. Zondi will take us through it and some of the tips and things to look out for. Welcome, Dr. Zondi.
Good evening, Kotso, and good evening to everybody else, Tyron and Bongi. Good to be here with you.
Fantastic. I think we are a fantastic bunch today. But I'm just going to get it started and speak to Tyron. Tyron, would you tell us what are expectations going into these games?
I think it's going to be something different for everyone. I think, like for me, obviously, what I've experienced in the past is going to be completely different from what Tokyo is going to be. You know, not having fans in the stands, not being able to cheer the way we would normally do it. I think that's the first thing for me that came into my mind, is that I have to adapt to the way I'm going to see the games. Because especially when you've been to a games before, you're expecting it to be the same or greater than that. Now we might have a lesser type of a game. So my mental aspect has to change a little. So I think from that point of view, that's what I'm seeing. But it's still going to be an amazing experience. I think it's still going to be a show that we're going to put on, give out our best. And like for me, every single moment I get a chance to wear the green and gold, it matters to me. I want to represent, I want to show every single person in South Africa, we are proudly South African and what we're going to do. So that's it for me. You know, that's all I ever dreamt about from the time I was a little boy. My dream was to wear green and gold, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Walk out there and be proud of it.
Absolutely. And I'm 100% sure that the rest of the team as well is looking forward to be there, represent the country. Now, 2020 was quite a difficult year, Tyron. And how has the preparations been during those hard times of COVID? I mean, you had to be able to stay positive, going into 2020 Olympic Games, and a lot has happened in terms of not able to go into training at the right time when the lockdown started. You were not able to move as much as you wanted to move, especially going to the track to get yourself ready. How do you feel? How do you feel right now?
Well, let's go back to 2020. I felt really great. I was throwing some of the best distances I've been throwing in a long time. I mean, it's almost 12 years now that I'm doing this. So I was in a really good space. Obviously, lockdown happened, everything changed. And I was still good because I managed to set up my gym at home and train and do my stuff. The problem I couldn't do was any of my technical throwing, which meant I couldn't go to the track. So I tried to do a lot of drills at home, which I thought was good. After that first 5 weeks, I struggled. I think mentally I took a lot of a hit because, especially as an athlete, you prepared yourself for this moment. And for me, the challenge was, how do I pick myself up from here? And I'm being totally honest when I say this. I struggled with it. I had a lot of conversations with my psychologist and obviously the coach, having to get me back to a point where I'm starting to get positive again, thinking about the games. And it takes me back to why I ever started to do this. And that's always my go-to point. It's always to inspire and motivate. And that's my thing. If I'm doing that, I get back to where I want to be. And that's exactly it. I got back on the road again, started figuring this whole thing out, getting my mind sorted out. Then obviously the gyms opened up, the track opened up, and I was good to go. But then it became a challenge because you were nowhere near where you were at the initial point. So I think that was a difficulty. But right now, I think we're in a good space. Things are looking good. Mentally, I'm fixed up. I think I'm really positive about the games. I'm starting to throw really good distances, which is really helping me personally. And I think obviously the ultimate goal is to go there and represent proudly. So I think we can achieve that.
Yeah, fantastic. Dr. Zondi, athletes have been preparing through hard times, and through uncertainties of the COVID pandemic. Can you share with us what it entails to be a COVID liaison officer?
With absolute pleasure. So this COVID liaison officer role is a new role, obviously in light of the circumstances in which we find ourselves and the circumstances that the games are going to continue. So specifically, the role is one that has been designed to be the liaison between the IOC and the local organizing committee at the games and the NOC, or the National Olympic or Paralympic Committee and Paralympic Committee. And the importance of the role is that they understand the guidelines that have been put in place in terms of the playbook, that they ensure that the entire delegation understands these guidelines, that they are aware of the details behind them, and the implications of essentially compliance and non-compliance. And ultimately, this COVID liaison officer also has to ensure that various means have been put in place to ensure that there is compliance and that everybody in the delegation does carry out the guidelines as indicated, essentially, to ensure safe games.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And what can athletes expect in terms of, they will not be able to be with everyone like in the normal games, like in the past. What is some of the tips that you could give them?
So I think there's going to be very many differences, as Tyron has already explained. So clearly he's an athlete who started to ensure that he understands the playbook and what the implications are in terms of his activities and behaviors in the Olympics, which one appreciates. But really, there will be many. I mean, firstly, I think we need to acknowledge that COVID-19 is still a risk. It's still out there. We are still facing a pandemic as a globe. And so the measures that have been put in place that we've all had to experience in the past year remain, so the very sort of fundamental principles around minimizing physical interaction, around constantly wearing a mask, around hygiene practices, including washing your hands and safe respiratory hygiene. These are all measures that are going to be put in place. In addition, there will be fundamental measures that relate to testing, screening, and isolation. In other words, that we ensure that we regularly test everyone that is at the games and that we isolate people if necessary. But that's the formal stuff. I think what Tyron alluded to, and I'm sure Bongi can also describe, and it's so worthwhile having a conversation about what the games are like. And Bongi will have experienced Commonwealth Games, many other games. And there's just a really special, there's a really special atmosphere, spirit at these games, much of which is created by the interactions that athletes have with each other, within a team, as in within a country, and very much the interactions, the opportunities for interactions that are created at the games that athletes have with each other across nations. But because of the circumstances that we find ourselves in, obviously much of that will have to be cut down, or completely eradicated for safety reasons, if we are going to have a safe games. And so Tyron said something that's very South African. What are we going to do when we can't cheer? Because obviously when we celebrate as Africans, as South Africans, we cheer, we laugh, we scream, we shout, we embrace, we hug. And all of these things we are not going to be able to do. And it sounds really stupid. I had somebody was like, but that's really silly. And then I was like, no, but it really makes sense, right? Because just sticking to that one, and I'll hand back over to you. Obviously we know that COVID-19 is transmitted via respiratory dropsules. And so when you shout or scream, that rate of spread is increased. Yeah. And so it seems like something that's really arbitrary, but there's method behind the madness. And there's method behind all of the interventions that the expert groups that have been informing the IOC have put together.
Wow. Well, I think that's really important information that you've just shared with us. And also, when you speak about constant testing of the athletes at the athletes village, I just want to find out from Bongi, if when you are hearing this information from doctor, sharing it with us, what are your feelings that knowing that you are in team sports and having to work as a team to stay safe during the training camps, the matches, and heading to Tokyo, how has it been for your team during the pandemic? And that's the first question. How has it been for your team, knowing that you are in the group, you're not a singular athlete, you're in the group, it's a team, it's a teamwork. And how has that been? And the second one, how do you feel about the constant testing that you have to do? The possibilities are that if someone tests positive in your team, how is that going to sit within the team? Do you guys travel with more reserves for the team, Bongi?
I think on our side, we actually quite safe at this point because we are not an Olympic sport. Obviously, netball is still not there yet. But if I think of it and all the test series that we have to play, like in March, we played against Uganda and Namibia. And, the procedures that have to take place now that we have this COVID-19 compared to before, all those, steps that we have to follow, the precautions is actually mentally exhausting. Before you even get to a point where, okay, now we are ready to compete, probably a day or two before, obviously, after our preparations. If I remember correctly, in March, when we played in Cape Town, a test series against, obviously, these two countries, we had to get there a week prior where we could do obviously all our training sessions and stuff, but no contact with anyone. We had to be in our own bubble. Even if we have to walk across to a training venue, literally we had to make sure that firstly amongst ourselves, there's no touchy. And if we have to meet someone along the road, it's like even the people you can't really stop and spend time with them. And like Doc said, we are very much of Africans. Like we want to, spend some time, have a good laugh, high fives, bum taps, whatsoever. It's now like you can't have all those things. And having that in mind, we obviously know that, that you have to do this to be safe and also to carry on with the, the planned programs. Otherwise, if one obviously gets COVID, it's everyone that gets isolation. And that's what we don't want. And that's the worst thing with COVID-19. It's like one person gets it and everyone that was around that person has to be isolated, which means the whole team either way will be at risk, if I look at it like that. But I guess in a team sport, again, it's not just about, having to get tested, having to be clear, COVID-19 negative. It's about being on the courts, the stuff that we do together. We very much connected by, giving each other high fives, fist pumps, hugs. We jump on each other constantly, just getting excited about stuff, about the wins, about, celebrating each quarter performances. And now it's like you can't do all those things. And if you do, it looks like we actually scared of touching each other or even getting close to each other. Yeah. And I guess it's something that every athlete out there is trying to get used to, especially in a team sports space. But with that, obviously, we're bearing that in mind, the fact that we're being taught about these things and there's a constant, education around what we need to do, what we can't do, and now trying to come up with different things of encountering what we can't do anymore and coming up with new things that can still keep us connected. So I guess with everyone that's going, obviously, to Olympics, they're actually bearing in mind all those things and still thinking of what is it as a team that can still keep us connected, although we can't do 1, 2, 3 things, because we don't want to jeopardize the fact that if you are at risk, you can't compete.
Yeah, that is actually a great advice that you are giving to the teams that are going to the games. What is it that you can still do as a team just to stay connected? I mean, a team has to stay connected. And just going to you, Dr. Zondi, is that, how often will they test the teams? Because, I mean, if let's say rugby has to play in 2 days' time and they get tested today and 4 players are coming out positive, will it be such a short time for the game or will it give it enough time, like 7 days or so? You're mute.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah. Yes.
So just in terms of the testing, they will be testing every single day. That's how vigilant the games organizers have been. And the purpose of that testing, so it'll be antigen testing that's done every day. Antigen testing is the rapid test. Some people might recognize that name. That's done in the saliva, from the saliva. If there's any sort of positive indication from that rapid test, then they would proceed to use the same sample to do what's called the PCR, which is the gold standard test. But fundamentally, to answer the question, they will be testing every day. And the purpose really is also to pick up in advance any asymptomatic carriers, essentially. And that's why they're being so vigilant in terms of the testing. But as Bongi says, it's exhausting, right? Because what that means is logistically, I mean, that there's tens of thousands of people who attend games. So they have to organize for approximately 10,000 people to be tested every single day somewhere throughout the games. And even in terms of you're working out your schedule, that is a compliance criteria. So if you miss a test, it has almost the same implications as you missing a doping test. That's how serious this is going to be at the games.
Oh wow, that's actually a great information. So I'm just thinking now, with the athletes that are going to the games, what would be your advice in terms of getting to the testing centers right now, since they've rolled out the vaccination? Would it be best to do it right now or just wait for the later stage?
There are very clear guidelines in terms of when you need to be tested if you're a member of Team South Africa, because it's not just the athletes, of course, it's the coaching staff, the GTM as well. If you're a member of the Games family, there are very specific rules or criteria about when you need to get tested, guidelines rather. So everyone will need to get tested 96 hours before they leave. In other words, they depart on a flight to Tokyo, and then again within 72 hours. So 2 tests within 96 hours of you getting on a plane and leaving to go to Tokyo. Then there's still clear guidelines. When you get to the airport in Tokyo and Japan, you need to show your 2 negative tests. And when you get to the airport, there will be another test, likely an antigen test that's done at the airport, before you can even pass to customs. If you get a negative antigen test, so that's 3 tests within 4 days, essentially, then you will be able to proceed into the Games village, and also using Games transport, as Bongi has described, even within her circumstances. You're not engaging with anyone along the way. You're not going in, through the shops at the airport. You're literally just going almost in we won't call it a bubble because it's very difficult to bubble 10,000 people, but in a secure environment, as secure as possible, to get from the airport and then to the village or your destination.
Fantastic. So to all the athletes going down to the Games, please, if you're on the list, it's best to go. 93 hours before, you said, Zondi?
96 hours. And I might mention, actually, because I think this is important, while the testing will only start 96 hours before, for 14 days before you leave the country, right, or enter Japan, you need to be isolating. So in other words, you need to be very protective of your space, who you engage with, because that's a critical time, yes, right, before you leave. If anything were to happen, then you're not going to the Games. That's your Games dreams finished. So for 14 days before, you need to be isolating. So in other words, limiting your movements, limiting physical interaction with anybody, not going to social functions. There will be no farewell parties. Unfortunately, you can do those via Zoom. And also, Japan has mandated that every day for those 14 days, you must monitor. So you need to upload any symptoms you've got and declare that you're symptom-free, and also monitor your temperature for those 14 days before you board the flight. So quite a few measures being put in place even before you leave the country to go to Japan, just again to try and ensure that everybody remains safe, yourself and also the people that you will be traveling with and engaging with at the Games.
Yeah. So it's really important that we protect each other by just making sure that you follow the regulations. And I'm just thinking, I remember the past Olympic Games that I've been to, the traveling has been like the biggest thing, like the most fun thing to do, within the transits, and I'm just thinking, how bad is it going to be, or how strict, not necessarily bad, but how strict is it going to be when athletes have to, during the transit areas? Is there some sort of regulations placed for athletes there? I mean, you can't control, There'll be shops open, there'll be people wanting to go there and there before they go to their gate, before the flights. What sort of regulations are there in terms of that, Dr. Zondi?
So there's a very detailed guidelines that have been put in place, as I've said, and these are found in the playbook. But fundamentally, as you're saying, much is going to then rely on the athlete or the member's sense of responsibility to themselves, right, and again to the bigger Olympics family is the reality. Within all of these cases, if there's a transit area, many of the airlines have been very forthcoming. They know what's happening. They've said, for instance, we'll organize a secure space for you to stay in so that you don't have to be sitting in a terminal with other people coming in and out, of course. So many of the airlines, and in fact the Games organizers, there's just that amount of detail and care and consideration that has gone into the plans. But ultimately, you're right. A single person, being the team manager, cannot control every single member of that delegation. And if somebody decides to deviate, that would be on them. And so I think an important part of this process is exactly what you're doing right now, and exactly the conversations that we're having with Bongi, Tyron, and many other people that we will have, this conversation with, is to educate people and to make them understand that the importance of complying with these measures, again, for their own Olympic dream. But at some point, this is bigger than you. At some point, this is not just about your own individual journey. It's about the country and the people that you're representing, and also the other people who you might jeopardize if you become, and I'm going to call it selfish, in not complying with the measures.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it, guys, from our own COVID liaison officer. I think that's great information, and I'm 100% sure that the athletes that are watching this and the whole of Team SA watching this, they're going to appreciate this information and they'll take this as serious as possible. I'm going to deviate a little bit. I just want to touch on Bongi a little bit. Bongi, how's your foundation going, and what does it entail?
Oh, that's the exciting part. I think, like, to start off, I went and I played netball overseas. At some point, I played in Australia for one of the clubs, Adelaide Thunderbirds, and I met one of the Australian Diamonds players, national netball player that side, and she was running her own netball academy, sort of, and it used to be called Aaron Bell Netball. So she used to invite me there to do like sort of, talks or motivational talks to speak to the girls, let them know about who Bongi is, where I come from, and whatsoever about my netball career and stuff, just to motivate them and give them like some positive talks and things to see and understand that playing sport is not just about getting on court and playing, but it's about also the experiences that we gain, things that we can teach each other along the lines that, So, and then we had a talk after that. At some point, she told me that, listen, your story is very powerful. I wanted you at some point, just think of, starting your own netball academy, clinic, whatever you want to call it. So me being me, at some point, I always say I thank netball because it has changed me so much. I had no confidence at some point, literally wanted to just play the sport and not do anything like this. Then I said to her, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do it, but we'll look into it. So when I came back 2018, straight away that year, I thought to myself, I want to go out and meet, some new talent. And I want to see how much I can give back, share the experiences and all of that. Started with just a first netball clinic and it went so well. Girls were so hyped up, to meet someone like a Bongi. And to myself, it might not seem like a big thing to be where I'm sitting, but to the kids out there, that day actually made me realize how important it is that when we have time, we go out and we meet, these young girls, because they dream to be where we are and we probably don't realize that much. So then it carried on like that. So I thought to myself, I want to do something big with it. And I literally want to go, firstly, start back from home, give back, and actually start something where I can give the girls a platform, to play, where they can play the sport without having to pay. Because when I started playing, big issue was financially, I wasn't good. I needed someone to actually look after me in that sense. And my coach was really good in taking that over. I have to thank him every time I talk about it. I just remember that. So I then decided, okay, I'm going to start in Hammersdale, create a nice netball club where we can just get sponsors on board, or even if it's just a minor support, something like supporting the girls going to the court and playing netball without having to pay. It ended up being so big. The girls are playing in the KZN Netball Super League. We have two teams there. One plays in the Super League, which is the A level, and the other one plays in B. So that progress made me go out and want to coach out more. Today, again, I was out there with the project and coaching. So it's quite exciting. Still a lot of plans that I want to put into place. So come next year, it's going to go big. So I'm really excited about it.
Fantastic. And I think it's important to share your story, right? And just like how you started. It's very important to share the story. Yeah. And just motivate other people. At most times, elite athletes and elite team players, they just want to keep to themselves and just continue doing what they do best. They don't want to be out there. But actually, like you've illustrated how important it is to share your story, because you don't know who's listening out there and what sort of seed you are planting for people to excel. So congratulations on that, and we hope that you keep going and we keep inspiring more of the youth out there, especially the young girls. Tyron, you have a different story to share, my brother. You had, I saw you. You were walking on the ramp on the 10th of June.
Good one!
Oh, he was fantastic. He was looking really fantastic. You were sharing.
I took my lead. I took my lead from you, God. So you started the whole thing off. That's why.
Hey, I think you were looking great, Tyron. Tell me, how do you feel about the kit?
To be honest with you, I love every single kit I have ever received as a South African, right? And I'm being honest with you. I competed from 2011, and I'm telling you, this made me excited. This, for the first time, is proudly South African, and the honor of, that's where the energy came from, by the way. It was just putting that on, feeling that vibe of what it's going to be like. Because there's something I was explaining to a lot of the athletes backstage. We might not even have an opening ceremony. Use this as your opening ceremony. Go out there and enjoy that moment. Have the energy run through you. And that's how it all started off. I think everybody felt that vibe coming through. And I mean, I love the kit. I was lucky enough to be a part of some of the discussions with the kit. So I'm proud of what's come out. And I think we're going to be looking like a real amazing team when we get onto that field in Tokyo.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that we have some local designers that are up behind the kit. So I think that's really inspiring. And also, you know, it moves us a step ahead from what we were in 2016. So
exactly.
And it's important that athletes wear something that they feel great in. So Bongi,
and you can be proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to find out from Bongi, how important is it for athletes to feel and look great in their kit? Does that affect the performances? Does it make them perform better, or it doesn't matter?
It's actually funny because at that level, obviously you treat yourself as an elite athlete, but it's very important, you know, kits for me is very important. And it's not just for myself only. I think as females, we want to, you know, feel good especially starting from what we're wearing. So I think confidence-wise as well, walking towards a different team, different country, you want to feel the sense of confidence in what you're wearing first before you even speak, before you even walk, before you even act or do whatever you want to do. The confidence needs to start from what you're wearing. And I always say this because on the day, what I'm wearing actually sets up the tone of how my day is going to look like. And some people might not be like that. But for me, in a team environment, in sports, confidence does come with the kit as well. So that's really the tone. So I have to say credits to, you know, the guys that really came up with the kits and everyone involved, because it did look like everyone was really excited and confident about it. And like you said, athletes need to be confident what they're wearing, you know, to be able to get out with confidence and perform with such composure.
Absolutely. And it was really, really inspiring to be out there and to see something that's really different. So that's really great. So I think we are heading towards a great Olympic Games. As Team South Africa, we're going to be feeling great. And also, we've come to the end of the show, and I would really like to thank all of you, Tyron, Bongi, and Patu. Thank you for joining us and giving the athletes the information that they need. So thank you so much, and we hope to see you more in the future on the show again.
Thanks, Kotso.
Thank you. And good luck to all the athletes going to the games.
Pleasure. Thank you.